Back with a boom. The Full On Football podcast is back. Tonight, I'm joined by Dan the Man, Daniel Leggett, friend of the show. Dan, I want to put it to you to start with. The England-US game the other day, there's been a lot of criticism in the media regarding England's performance. Very vague question, but just to start off, how did you see the game? Draw, was it fair?
Draw was more than fair. I think both teams, as you saw the game draw out, I think both teams were extremely happy with the draw. I think that was quite evident on the performance of, well, perhaps both sides. I think arguably had the better chances with the two Kane chances. I mean, I know that they did hit the bar with Pulisic, but other than that, it was a bit of a drag. I think both teams were very happy to take away 1 point.
To be fair, as much as they hit the bar, it was never going in, was it? Do you know some of those that hit the bottom of the bar, they were always rising. That was on the way down, wasn't it? It was never really looked threatening, despite the fact they hit the bar.
Yeah, it was one of those where when it hit the bar, you was more surprised. You heard the sound of a bar than you was expecting the ball to hit the back of the net. And it was just one of them, a bit out of nothing, but yeah.
100%. So there's been a lot of reaction, let's say, to the draw to the USA and overreaction, dare I say, because obviously off the back of the Iran game, the 6-2 win, we're going to win the World Cup if you believe what you read on Facebook. And now all of a sudden we'll be lucky to get a point against Wales tomorrow. It just seems to swing from one extreme to the other. Where do you stand?
Overreaction, yes. In fact, overreaction 100%, because the idea of a group stage is to get out of it. And we're going to get out of it on the back of that draw. So overreaction 100%. I think the bigger worry is that year after year, we find that the winners of the World Cup just tend to grow into the competition. And I think as a football fan, as somebody who wants England to do well, looking at that performance, I wouldn't say it's something to be overly concerned about, because a good performance, a good result against the Welsh, and everybody's optimism changes. It's a little bit like that game last year in the World Cup after a very good result against Croatia. Again, we were going to win the Euros, and then we played that Scotland game, which was more than frustrating. In fact, I'd argue it was worse than the USA performance. But it doesn't when the final whistle goes on our last game at the World Cup, wherever that may be, this isn't going to be a game that people are going to be talking about, put it that way.
No, it's a great point. And, people obviously make a lot out of the performance itself, which understandably so, but you've got to remember that has all but qualified us, really. Wales do need to win by 4 tomorrow night. And as you said, the chances are we go through, we should win the group if we can beat Wales, which you would expect us to do. If we don't, we go through in second place. We should be in the round of 16 either way. And then whatever happens from there happens, And it's only a small memory in the tournament. So taking you to the game, where do you think it went wrong for England? Or do you think that actually, no, a point is a sensible point? And I like the point that you made about growing into the tournament, by the way. Weirdly, mate, I don't know if this makes any sense at all. Tournament of football, it's all about momentum. It's all about growing into it, as you said. I can't remember a team ever winning all 7 games. So there was actually part of me, weirdly, it was quite glad that we drew a game. I know that sounds ridiculous. That sounds utterly ridiculous. But if you win all 3 group games, you've almost used, do you know what I mean?
It's that subliminal wake-up call. It's that, oh, okay, so we're here now. We're going to have a proper game. Cruise control throughout a group could almost be seen as a bad thing as well. I mean, you could get woken up extremely rudely in the last 16 and that's it, you're going home. So yeah, I understand what you mean. I do. There's a place for that as well in the World Cup. And I do think there's a bit of weight to it. I think a lot of the intangibles at a tournament often get over dramatized for no real valid reason other than thought or a way that we as fans would feel in that situation, which is, being a professional footballer, especially, we got Rice at 23, his 3rd tournament, Gareth at his 3rd tournament. These boys know what they're doing. They ain't going to be worried about a draw or a win or a loss at this stage. If they get out of the group stage, they'll take each game as it comes, I think.
With the USA game, what would have you done differently had you been in charge on the night? I think the obvious thing, Phil Foden, a lot of noise being made about the fact he didn't make it onto the pitch.
If he did make it onto the pitch and we still drew 0-0, would it just be a different name? Because I think it probably would. I think the argument is, I don't know if you've seen the rumours of Jordan Henderson starting over Jude Bellingham. Now, if I was to ask you to list England's perhaps top 5 players going into, this next century that we got in front of us, I would have thought Trent Alexander, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden would be 3 players you'd probably look towards in terms of creativity, excitement, maybe something that we got a little bit different that other nations don't have. And it's that worry about Gareth Southgate. Can he adapt tactically to get the best out of his more flair players? And by not bringing on Foden and now perhaps dropping Bellingham, it just seems a step backwards maybe in that department.
So looking ahead to Wales, obviously tomorrow night. Eno, if you're listening, you're going home, son. I hope you are listening because that's what I'm hoping is going to happen. Is he a Welsh fan or not? I think he is, isn't he?
He's born in England. He's lived in Wales all of his life. I think he supports about 4 or 5 different nations. So
Just say he picks and chooses, doesn't he? Napoli, Arsenal, Hereford, Wales, England, Iran. Where does it stop? Eno, you tell me. So England, looking forward to the Wales game tomorrow. What changes would you be looking to make going into that Wales game? Are there any players that you look at and you think have to have a rest, have to be dropped?
there's another. Again, you alluded to it slightly in that tournament football. You want to go into, like where you said you were kind of happy that we drew, like maybe that wake up call. I think going into the last 16 cold could potentially be a bad thing. And then it depends on, can you get the job done in 90 minutes? What's the rest time like between the last 16 and the quarterfinals? There's a lot to think about. I don't think there's any players that perhaps need a rest at this stage. I would have thought not. I think the spaces in between games have been okay, especially for England. I think we're quite lucky that we were on first. I always think that because it's been a while since we've been in like a Group A or a Group B, because you get to play your matches first, and then you get that rest time. And then once everybody else is finishing off their groups, we'll be all right. We're in recovery mode. So I don't think anyone needs resting. In fact, players like Maguire are probably enjoying game time because they haven't had game time. And we do have a couple which are coming back from injury. So I'll mention Kelvin Phillips, maybe getting the cobwebs off of Henderson might be a good idea, depending on how much you want to play him. Kyle Walker, maybe. So I wouldn't mind seeing these, but I don't think rotating for freshness of the boys that have been playing is the way to go.
So I find that interesting because I go the other way on that. I feel as though the risk of not winning the game, because that's the risk here.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a free hit. I'll explain what I mean. Obviously, we do want to win the group. I get that. And if we draw or lose, we might not win the group. I respect that. But worst case scenario, I can't see that we'll get beat by 4. Famous last words and stuff. So we should go through. So that's a bit of a free. You've got that in the back pocket. Even the worst thing could happen, lose by 2 in some, parallel universe where everything goes against you. You lose by 2. You still go through, and you've still got another chance to pull it right in the round of 16. So because of that, I'd be looking to freshen it up quite a bit. Not a complete overhaul. I think that's naive. You mentioned Harry Maguire there. That's a player I made a point of before the tournament. I'm big on picking on form going into a tournament, but with Maguire, he was the exception. I always thought he was the exception to the rule. I thought you had to pick him. We had nobody else that I thought could, that dominant centre-back, great in the air. He's been really good in the first 2 games. I think he has to play every game. I think that's really important, especially in the groups.
Maguire, yes. I had a couple of stats written down for Maguire today, just because I think he deserves his flowers, especially after all the scapegoating that gets at my football club, especially at Manchester United, but also from like rival fans as well. It's always in Maguire's direction. So, and the reason why he's so important for England showed in the US game. I think 8-headed clearances. That's more than double of anyone else on the pitch that game. I mean, that in itself, who else would do that in an England shirt? Because I hear a lot of Ben White shouts, and I get it. Very good footballer, very good season so far, but he doesn't offer you that. Do we concede without Maguire against the US potentially? So yeah, I do think Maguire has to play, and I think he needs game time as well. So I don't think there's any danger of changing him. I'm just more so thinking about the other players that could potentially come in to freshen it up, like you said, or maybe people that do need game time. If you bring in a Kyle Walker, do we have to go 3 at the back? Is 3 at the back advisable against Wales? Do we mind if we finish second in the group? There's a lot of unanswered questions, which I think only Gareth has.
Maguire, you touched on there, the Ben White shout. I get that. And as I said, I'm pretty big on form, especially when it's only 7 games. That's the thing. It's not a league. A league, no. You might persist with your best team. It's only 7 games. You've got to pick players on form. I just thought the reason Maguire was different was because there's probably only one centre-back we'd all hang our hat on, and that's John Stones. And John Stones was going to start. And I think with the Ben White shout you've just made, stylistically, I think he's very similar to John Stones. And John Stones was always going to be the one that's starting. And do you want 2 players that are stylistically the same playing alongside each other? Probably not. So that goes against Ben White a little bit for me. And same with Cody, better in a back 3. Has been very good this season. Similar again, very good on the ball. And then you've got Eric Dyer and Dyer Maguire. I know Dyer's been in good form this year, but I'd still go with Harry Maguire personally. That I think it was more to do with the fact I would have picked Maguire on the basis of the fact I was picking the best partner for John Stones, not the best centre back in form, if that made sense.
I think that's the best way to even set up an 11, regardless. The best partner for John Stones. I do agree. And then that's when you start looking further forward. I do think we struggle in centre midfield. I think Declan Rice profile of play is brilliant. Very, very good on the ball, box to box, tenacious, aggressive, wins everything. Good. He's tidy on the ball. One thing that's missing from his game is just the want and the natural ability to get the ball off of the back four. Now, we've persisted up to this point with Bellingham and Rice. And I'm not sure, a little bit like you just said there with the perfect partner for John Stones. I do think we need somebody who's comfortable getting the ball off the back four. Now, I know there's this idealistic way of playing, and we're not going to be Man City. We're not going to be Spain. I'm not even talking for that stretch. But what it does allow you to do is, even in games when you're under the cosh, is just to take the sting out of it at times. And also against these teams who are high energy, high pressing, like the US were, having somebody there to really look after the ball. I think getting that balance right, I still think we're looking for it. So I don't mind using this Wales game with the changes to try and find the answer to that. I just don't know if that's going to be Gareth's approach.
I think that is an absolutely fascinating point, to be fair, Dan. What you're saying there then is, obviously he's not English, but a Jorginho stylistic type of player, a Xavi, just to get on the ball and dictate play, to calm things down a bit. Is that what you're looking for?
Perfect. Yeah, exactly that.
And that'd be in place of Declan Rice, you're saying?
No, I don't think Declan Rice can do it. I think Declan Rice should play next to somebody that can do that. This is no slate on.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Bellingham or the way that we've set up, or who's the better player, who's the better profile. Like Calvin Phillips is not as good as an all-round midfielder as Bellingham. He's not. He doesn't have as much to his game as what Bellingham does. But what he does do is he's very good at dictating play. He's very good in calm under pressure. He's okay with being pressed. He actually goes looking for the ball off the back four. Whereas you want a Rice, you want a Bellingham further up the pitch. And I just feel like as a pair, they don't really complement each other. I think we go with one or the other. Or if you're going to play both, remove the number 10 and still let one of the... I don't want Jordan Henderson to be there, but it's the same profile of player like Jordan Henderson. Jordan Henderson is more comfortable getting the ball off the back four than both Bellingham and Rice. I prefer Phillips myself, but how fit is he?
That was actually a question I was going to ask you. Is Henderson the profile of the player closest thing that we've probably got? On the Bellingham point, probably Bellingham's biggest fan, liked him for... Do you know, I actually saw him play for Birmingham, believe it or not, against Bristol City. Good player. But he is a fantastic talent. To be vice-captain at Dortmund, obviously stepped in with Marco Reus. By the way, Mats Hummels still plays for Dortmund, so that's not okay. I think he's got 100 caps for Germany, and they've thrown him the armband. So it's not that Mats Hummels isn't fit. They've actually gave it to an Englishman, 19 years old. Incredible footballer. Reminds me a lot of a young Steven Gerrard, but he is better than him, same age. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
I feel as though this current system that he's playing in for England, I will just say before I continue my point, I think probably the last dozen games he's played for England, he's probably been our best player for about 5 of them. He's been outstanding.
Yes.
I think he was our best player against Iran. I think in this system, though, the whole point you were just making about Rice and Bellingham there, I think it stifles him a lot. And I think a lot of it comes down to the place that Mason Mount is playing in the team, given that creative freedom to be the number 10. I'm not sure that gets the best from Jude Bellingham.
It doesn't. And then this would be my next question to Gareth if I had a chance to talk to him. If you're going to get Bellingham and Rice partially doing a 6, partially doing an 8 together, which is interesting in itself, you need to be able to do it. Someone like Frankie de Jong can do that, but that's a completely, again, are they the right profile of player? If we're going to have Bellingham a little bit deeper, if we're going to have Rice doing more work than he does for his club side, are we getting the results out of Mount? And I don't think we are. Well, we're not. So if Mount's our creative force and he's not creating, maybe I wouldn't mind it at all. I wouldn't mind a Phillips, Rice and Bellingham centre midfield. I really wouldn't mind that. That in itself makes a lot more sense than just Bellingham and Rice together, because I feel like there's a lot missing from that midfield with just those two.
Oh, just to quickly touch on it. I think you're right. I think with the balance, I think Phillips could sit, Rice could push on. Rice is good enough to push on, by the way. He's got the legs, and Bellingham can just be let off the lead a little bit.
Hmm.
Whereas I think in this current system, having Bellingham as one of those two holders completely stifles his game. So
Yeah,
it's
you
one of
don't
those.
get the.
On Mason Mount, is he somebody that would miss out in your next game against Wales if you were picking the side?
I feel a little bit like I feel like Mason Mount is a massive scapegoat, and I feel like it's unfair criticism. Again, we've mentioned balance with the centre backs. We've said the same with the centre mids, and Declan Rice in the 10 at Chelsea, where he's at his best. He's got Kai Havertz, who likes to drift and roam around. He can fill in Kai Havertz's hole that he leaves behind. He's got line breaking passes behind him with Kovacic, with Jorginho. He doesn't need to do that at Chelsea. What he does do at Chelsea is very high energy. He's everywhere. He's very good off the ball. His movement. He's an extremely intelligent footballer. He's very, very tidy. He doesn't waste the ball. He doesn't waste possession. But if you're relying on Mason Mount, somebody who doesn't need to for their football club, be that out and out creative force in order for Kane to get on the ball, for us to create chances, I just don't think it's a sensible approach to a 90-minute game of football. I just don't see where I'm not saying he can't do it in moments. I just don't see that reliability in Mason Mount to do what England need to do out of their number 10.
Personally, I don't know if you see this. With Mason Mount, I actually don't think he's not a winger. He plays left wing for Chelsea all the time. I don't think he's a winger. And I don't think he's creative enough to be a number 10. I think his best position would be playing number 8, one of the midfield three. But everybody seems to persist with him further forward. I just think that puts more expectations on him to create. I think if you dropped him back into just a normal midfield three and he could just be busy and just do a job, as you said, he does get a lot of unfair criticism. I think that's due to the overpicking of him, whether it's good form, bad form, good day, rainy day, he's always in the team. And I think that is what cheeses people off. If it wasn't to be for the fact that he's being picked all the time, I think everyone would recognize that he's a good player, because he definitely is.
No, he's definitely a good player. Like again, it comes back to that balance, that profile. And I hear what you're saying with the more deeper role, because it takes the pressure off of the goals and the assists, which everybody always looks to before they even watch a game of football nowadays. But the left wing for Chelsea is a little bit different, because obviously they play with wing backs, and when you've got Chilwell just overlapping you 24/7, you don't really need to be on the wing. You don't need to beat a man. You just need to be in that space, in that area. I think one of Mason Mount's biggest attributes is he's just in football intelligence off the ball, which is where he thrives. And England don't play with space. We don't play with like complete control of the game. We don't play with runners. We don't play with massive reliance on the wings in the wing back system. So I don't feel that Mason Mount's profile even fits this squad. I get why he's being picked. He's being picked because Foden doesn't play there for his club, apparently, Gareth's words. I don't know why Gareth couldn't have tried him there in a few friendlies if he knew if there was an unsurety around whether Foden could play that role. We had the chance to try it. He decided not to, and now we're here. And maybe Maddison's the next one. He's a bit junior, not in age, not in football experience, but in terms of international football, big stage football, Champions League and everything. Mount's obviously the senior pro here. Who else would you play there? Other than, again, like we said, going back to maybe those two dynamic eights in Bellingham and Rice, which I would like to see, by the way, but Gareth's not done this before. So I think just because the pigeonhole of this role being something that Gareth has to have in his 11, just because how he's used his England squad in the past, I don't see how he gets out of this without changing the system. I'm not against changing the system. I'm just not sure Gareth would.
It's a great point. Great point. I take it on board. A lot of noise being made about Harry Kane. Not scored a goal in the first 2 games of the groups. Weirdly, that reassures me a little bit, because I know that he won't go dry for too long. So I feel like as long as we stay in the tournament for a while, he's going to get goals. Does he play against Wales for you?
If you want to play him into form, I know you said form's important to you in tournament football, and I completely understand why. I think yes. The other 2 potential 9s in the squad, Rashford and Wilson, they're a lot better when we don't have the ball, when they're spacing behind. We're going to have the ball against Wales. So again, Kane should play there. That my only worry is the injury worry. I mean, if that injury worry is not a worry, doctors will tell you, Kane will tell you, Southgate will tell you, I can tell you. If that genuinely isn't a worry, then play him. I don't see that any reason not to play him.
See, I just think, despite the fact about form, it is very important. He's probably the one that's exempt. I mean, he could not score for 15 games. I'd still back him to score in the final, you know. Having said
He
that,
is
he's never
ruthless.
scored a goal in a final, has he? Ever.
No, never.
So I don't know why
Never.
I'd back him. I'm a bit of a mug, really. But I just feel like he's one of those, if he gets a chance, I don't care if he hasn't scored for 10 games. I don't think it bothers him. I think he'd take the chance. I'd personally rest him. I just think he won't want to, and he'll want to get the goals. He'll want to score a couple and play himself in. I know what you're saying. I don't think the mental side of it phases him too much. I just rest his legs. Another 4 days rest.
Just to keep him fresh.
Just to keep him fresh, exactly. Because sometimes he can look a bit leggy.
I don't mind it. And then there's always that worry. Like when the groups were first set out and you drew on paper exactly who definitely was going to win the group and come runner up, and you knew what the bracket looked like, it's a lot better for England to finish first. Chuck that out of the window now, because this World Cup's been bonkers from start to finish so far. We don't know who's going to finish top, who's going to finish second. Maybe one or two will look set in stone. But I don't think it matters that much, top or bottom. I mean, if you want to avoid Brazil, then you've got to finish top. If you want to avoid Brazil and Spain, you finish top. But if you avoid Brazil and Spain, you're going to meet France. So I don't know. Is there a preference there?
There isn't really, is there? I've looked at this. I think there's a minor preference to finishing top.
Yeah.
But it's not material by any means. So the wingers, Saka and Sterling have been the two bit so far in the tournament. This is the area of the squad where we're flooded with depth. You likes of Grealish, you likes of Rashford, Foden, obviously playing on the wing because he's not a number 10 apparently, but obviously I think we both know he can do it.
Yeah.
What are you thinking for the next game against Wales? Is this an opportunity to give new people a go?
Yeah, sure. I don't see why not. I think here is where we can freshen up and we could roll the dice if you want. They could all pick their number and we'd roll the dice, and that's how we pick our wingers. I don't think it matters that much from the wings. I would probably rest Sterling and Saka purely because we can get away with it. Not done anything wrong. I think it's quite nice having a left-footed right winger. So maybe Foden out on the right wing, just so we keep that balance, which Saka offers us. And then on the left-hand side, I want to see Marcus Rashford playing off of Kane just because of how successful Heung-min Son is playing off of Kane. And I think if you copy and pasted that Heung-min Son profile into this England dressing room, Marcus Rashford fits like a glove to me, like the way that he likes to play his football. So that's the only reason why I want to see it. In terms of profile, in terms of better player, I'd probably go Grealish, probably Foden and Grealish, and I'd be happy with it. It's just I personally want to see the Rashford Kane to see how if it would work. I don't know whether a tournament football is the way to do this, but if you wanted to avoid that, then on merit, on ability, I'd go Grealish and Foden.
2 points on that. So firstly, the chemistry with Kane, the Heung-min Son comparison to Rashford, great shout. Stylistically, there's a lot of comparisons there from Rashford to Son. And when England, it sticks out for me, first transition to a 4-3-3, Nations League 2019, we beat Spain 3-2. We scored 3 in the first half. And that was a front three of Sterling and Rashford either side of Kane. And that's the best front three I've seen for England that day. And I think with Harry Kane's ability to drop in deep, and his passing range is unbelievable, by the way. It's creative. You need pace either side of Harry Kane. You need that pace. Without that pace, it kind of kills his passing range. You need runners in behind. However, horses for courses. Wales are a side that are more than likely just going to sit on the edge of their box. The spaces aren't going to be there. And the game, the second point that I was coming to, is probably more suited to the ball players, the likes of Grealish, likes of Foden. They've got to unlock a door rather than just run in behind. However, to throw a spanner in the works, Wales do actually need to beat us, and by 4 goals. So therefore, is there a chance they might come on to us a little bit?
Are they going to come out? But I don't think it's that much of a bad idea to allow the game to play out, to go with the ball players, allow the game to play out. And if they do start coming out, I mean, the subs are there for a reason. It's okay to change up at some point if we needed to. I don't mind Rashford starting on the bench. Like you said, I do really like the idea of runners off of Kane. And it's not just runners as well, because we know Raheem Sterling is quick. We know Bukayo Saka is quick. Like this is not new information. But what is really important is certain players like to play on the shoulder. They like to play in space. Rashford actively seeks those pockets all game long. He'll be on the shoulder, be moving from inside to outside, just trying to give himself half a yard and look for those passes in behind. I think Saka and Sterling, they like the ball to feet. Maybe this is just because Arsenal and City hold the ball so much, and Man United do play in transition a lot more than the other. So it's just a bit of muscle memory, maybe. So if that's going to be your approach, then go with Rashford. But if you expect to have the ball, I expect to have the ball, probably Grealish and Foden, just to give the other boys a rest.
100%. I'd love to see Foden through the middle. I've said for the best part of the year, just think about this. Just have a think, right? Rice, Bellingham, Foden as a midfield three. What doesn't that have? Can you imagine that for the next 8 years?
This again, going back to the profile. Now we see this at Man United, right? And that there needs to be somebody who's comfortable under pressure collecting the ball off the back four.
I get you.
And I think Foden potentially. This is why it's such an uncertainty, because City don't do it. You see this with Christian Eriksen at Man United. He's not the ball-playing defensive centre midfielder. That's Casemiro. But who gets the ball off of the back four? It's quite often Eriksen. Eriksen will be the one looking in the pockets. Look, Frenkie de Jong does it at Barcelona. He's not the deep-lying one, but he will go looking for the ball. I do think Foden could come in and look for the ball, but I just feel like that question hasn't been answered. So I don't know what it's missing, because I haven't seen Foden do it. But having said that, if Bellingham or Rice were to get comfortable as years go on, getting the ball off the back four, I don't think it's natural to them. I think they've got too much energy about them. I think they want to be bombarding. I think they want to be marauding. I think they like the aggressive side of the game, the physical side of the game. So if Foden coming in and collects the ball off the back four, I'm all for it, but I'd need to see it first.
Weirdly, despite the fact Foden plays in the front three and is seen as this killer, I can see that with Foden. And there was a game for England where he did actually play as the holder. I'm trying to think who it was. It was against somebody like Moldova or Andorra or something like that. Yeah. And he got about 4 assists. He was just playing holding midfield and just springing 40-yard passes. I don't know if you remember it. It was about a year ago. Unbelievable technical ability. It's definitely something he should do. He is, I think, ability-wise, he's a centre midfielder. In terms of his attributes, it's just in that side. How's he going to get in playing centre midfield? Unfortunately for him, he's good enough. He can also get in out wide. So I think that's why he ends up doing it more often than not for me.
Yeah, I've been screaming it for a few years now for it to happen with England. I understand why Gareth doesn't do it for England, because it doesn't happen for City. But Rodri, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, where is that space for him to go in and get that experience there? He could get it at England. We need someone like him. It's worth the patience with it. But I think Gareth's very, very copy and paste from club to country. I know if you're playing well for your club, you're going to be getting chances for England. Marcus Rashford is the perfect example of that this season. I'm not a fan of that approach, if I'm honest.
No, I completely understand. Talking of getting the chance to do it, somebody that did get the chance to do it for England was actually Trent Alexander-Arnold. He tried Trent out in the centre midfield role. Is he going to get any game time if you were in charge of England against Wales?
If I was in charge, yes. Here's my biggest reason why with Trent as well is I'll give you 2 negatives to having Trent Alexander-Arnold in your footballing team. Number 1 is the worry defensively. I think that's well documented. I think it's a little bit unfair at times. I do think defensively, one-on-one, he's actually quite good at defending. I think where his negative defending attributes come from is more the awareness. It's more reacting to attacking plays. It's reacting to runners. It's falling to sleep. It's being caught too far up the pitch. Now, the way that Liverpool deal with this is they leave one of their centre mids off to the right-hand side, just marshalling the space that Trent leaves. Not necessarily dropping in every single time when Trent leaves, but keeping an eye on runners, making sure they follow runners, just so it allows Trent to go forward with confidence and do what he does best. The negative to that is you lose a bit of control in centre midfield, and you lose the ability to have maybe a more offensive midfield as well. So, for example, at Manchester City, they have Bernardo Silva and a Kevin De Bruyne. You wouldn't be able to confidently put Trent there without changing the system slightly in one way, which I'm sure Pep would work out. But us sitting here right now talking, we probably won't come out with a solution for Manchester City. Luckily, we're not talking about Man City. We're talking about Liverpool for now, and then move on to England. Liverpool do it with Fabinho and Henderson years past, which to them left them with a one pivot in the attacking sense of Thiago Alcantara. So that's their outlet. Where City go with 2, Liverpool go with 1. But Liverpool's second attacking outlet is Trent. Now at England, we're not blessed with attacking creative centre midfielders. So I'm very, very okay with maybe a Jordan Henderson coming in, doing that role, which he did so well for Liverpool for years, and just letting Trent bomb on. I think what it would do is it will show us what version of Trent we could get in an England shirt, because that system would be there. And what's more is it would give us an identity of attacking going forward. I think like a Brazil isolating their wingers, that isn't a surprise to anyone. Spain controlling the game, that isn't a surprise for anyone. Dembele or Mbappe hitting bylines as quick as they can, running into space, it's not a surprise. And you know that's what you're going to get out of them. Depending on the game, I think we don't really know what we're going to get out of England. We've got individuals with quality. We can beat a man, can come up with combination play. We've scored some nice goals years past, tournaments past. So I don't doubt that it's there. But I do think if we could facilitate Trent, the fact we've got Harry Kane in the box as well, the fact that we aren't blessed with some ridiculously athletic Hakimi-like right back that would be missing out on, the fact we wouldn't be dropping a Bernardo Silva centre midfielder to facilitate Trent, I think it would give you a reliable offensive source. I'm very sceptical when it comes to Trent, and I have been for a while, and I'm not really sure where I'd sit him in terms of world right backs, because I'm extremely conflicted on what we've seen and the profile of player that he is. But again, a little bit like Foden in centre mid, I would love to see it. I think it's me saying, I think Gareth should try this, or I'd like to see this. We're in a tournament right now. These shouldn't be conversations that we should be having, but because friendlies have gone, qualifiers have gone, we're definitely going to win, and we haven't done any of these things. It's a little bit frustrating. But you asked the question what I would do with Trent's time if I was manager. I would have tried him to some degree leading up to the tournament, but here we are, sat third group game. I wouldn't mind seeing it. I don't think we will see it.
It's very interesting. That's very similar to my own thought process regards to a lot of the selections in the England squad, such as Pickford being in goal, for example. Like I'd have blooded Nick Pope about 2.5 years ago. So he probably would have been number one by now. But however, you're in a situation now where, by the way, Pickford's probably in the form of his life for Everton this season. He's been very good. He's been incredibly good for England. He's having a good tournament so far. There's no chance you drop him. I'm not saying that I would. If you're asking me who I'd pick Pickford. Same with Alexander-Arnold. I hear what you're saying. Big picture thinking, I'd have been bleeding him in for the last 2 or 3 years. He hasn't done that. You now probably don't just throw him in. You might just throw him in for the Wales game, but if you do, the problem is if he plays, it's almost a problem if he plays well. Probably causes more questions than answers for that.
It's just Wales. He's only played well because it's Wales. Do we put him in tournament football?
And then you play against Ecuador, and we've got a dilemma here. Do we pick him? Do we not pick him? Whereas it's a complete transition of style. And what I was hearing from what you were saying there was to be clear about what it is, the identity you want to do. Spain have a clear identity, Brazil have a clear identity, and England is somewhat stuck between the temptation of your likes of Maddison and Trent and Foden, but being defensively stubborn and defensively solid. Which brings me on to the next point regarding the system. Dan, you're pretty big on shape and things like that. Mm-hmm. What shape is it you'd be playing against Wales tomorrow night and beyond that?
I think going into this tournament, one big thing that I gave as a positive towards England is we're little bit of a Swiss Army knife as a squad. And I don't think many other teams have got this, in that we've kind of got a solution for every problem. If you wanted to sit back and sit in a 5 and you needed one player to look after a threat, you've got your Kyle Walker, you've got your Harry Maguire to deal with your headers, Walker to look after Mbappe. If you wanted to sit on the halfway line, you've got Rashford to transition. If you wanted to control the game, we could go with 4 at the back and then a 3 and then a 3. And I don't think many other squads have this. But I'm a big, big believer in, if you are on paper, I know football shouldn't be looked at or spoke about on paper, but I do think there's a lot of weight to this. On paper, if you are the stronger side, you should be taking the game to them. We are far better than Wales, man for man, far better than Wales, man for man. There's no need to go 5 at the back. I don't think it adds anything to us offensively. I think they should worry about us. The only reason I'd go 5 at the back is to get minutes in Walker's legs. No other reason, just that. I'd go maybe to match them. But even that sentence, to me, it bothers me that we're thinking, oh, let's match Wales and go 5 at the back. Like, what other big nation would do that? I don't think they would. So 4-3-3 for me, 100% 4-3-3. Whether you wanted to go with the double pivot centre midfield and let Trent bomb on, I don't think he will, just because that's Gareth. That's what I would do. I think we're probably going to see the same back four and keeper, probably. The centre midfield will be the same. Maybe Jordan Henderson comes in. I think Mount still keeps his place. I think the wingers might be changed and then Kane up front.
3 changes, 2 wingers, and Bellingham being dropped for Henderson is what you see.
Yeah.
But that's not what you do.
Not what I would do. No, I mean, we spoke about it slightly. I'm kind of mythed in the theory crafting behind what I would like to see. But the reason why I would like to see it is because we don't actually know, because we've missed opportunities years past again to implement a more proactive style. Just like we said again, identity. We're hard to beat. We're hard working. We got creativity in the side. Individuals with bags of experience, know-how, biggest stage. There's a lot going for England, but identity, an offensive identity. I'd love to hear a non-England fan tell me what we're good at offensively, because I'm not sure. You've got Harry Kane. That's probably going to be the answer.
And that is the big question in it. What are we good at offensively? And we definitely have the talent. There's no doubt about that. But it's not something that we work on a day-to-day basis. Dan, to close it off tonight, I'm just going to ask you for the most obvious thing that I should ask you before we close off. What's the score going to be?
Let's go 3-0 England. I
3-0.
want to go into the group stage and go into knockouts extremely positively. And I think one thing about this English team is we're really good with confidence. We know the Welsh boys. We know what they're about. We know they play in the Prem / they've played in the Prem already. They played at clubs that the English boys are at. I see it being quite comfortable 3-0.
And I should ask you, Gareth Bale, is he going to cause England problems tomorrow?
I think Gareth Bale has been a problem for Wales this tournament. I do think so. They look for him a lot. They rely on him a lot. He's obviously come up clutch with the winning the penalty, then scoring the penalty. I get he's iconic and they look to play through him, but he won't cause any problems for England though.
You heard it here first, Gareth. Eno, not going to cause any problems tomorrow. Not when we win 3-0. Cheers, Dan.
Appreciate it.